Well, it's time now to take a look at how the papers are covering the death of Queen Elizabeth. Solange Mougin is here in studio to do just that. Good morning, Solange.
Morning, Sharon.
So, as we might expect, it's on the front of all the British newspapers. Take us through it.
Yeah, naturally, her face is on pretty much all of the British papers today. As we see in a mosaic mashup of the UK dailies, the mood is a somber one. Our hearts are broken, says the Daily Mail. Thank you, ma'am, the Daily Mirror says. And then there are papers that simply went with dates, 1926 to 1922, as we see with The Guardian and with Metro. Personally, I like the Daily Telegraph's. It says, grief is the price that we pay for love, signaling here how millions of people are indeed touched and are in mourning right now.
Foreign tributes are also being paid, Solange, of course. All are discussing the length and the breadth of Elizabeth's reign.
Yeah, from a visual standpoint, Time magazine has done an excellent job tracing the 70-year reign. It shows a 1968 photograph by Cecil Beaton for its cover, and this magazine cover came out just after the announcement was made. Time magazine explains to us that the Queen has graced its cover 10 times, with the first being Princess Lilibet in April 1929. Now, Libération goes with the same photograph by Beaton, but in black and white. England's pain, it writes simply on the cover. In its editorial, it asks, how can this island of stability so suddenly disappear when everything else seems to be changing so rapidly? And Huffington Post tells us that Britain's new Prime Minister, Liz Truss, she called the Queen a rock on which modern Britain was built. And this theme of loss of the rock of stability, well, it's being picked up by a number of papers. As we see on the front page of Arab News, it pays tribute to the Queen, but also argues that her passing shines a spotlight on, quote, the uncertain future for both the monarchy and the UK as well, end quote.
How are the opinion pages then treating her death?
Well, stop all the clocks, cut off the telephone. That's how The Guardian's Gabby Hinsliff pays tribute to the Queen, with a reference here to W.H. Auden's powerful funeral blues poem. In her opinion piece, Hinsliff argues the Queen was the ultimate matriarch, quote, a form of female power exercised so artfully as almost to be invisible. She had, quote, the rare trick of a woman exercising profound influence without inciting backlash. This quiet, apolitical stance may prove a challenge for her successor, King Charles III. He will be too political, hypothesizes Politico, wondering if his environmental activism will hurt the view of the monarchy in Britain and in the United States, where the Windsors hold for many celebrity status.
Well, the tributes are rolling in as we would expect, Solange. Has there been some criticism too of the monarchy, though?
Yeah, the New York Times explains that the death is a global, personal, and political one. While most coverage has been full of praise, there has been a bit of pushback, a small bit of pushback. For example, the South African political party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, said that they will not mourn because the Queen's death is a reminder of the tragic period of Africa's tragic period, tragic colonial history. And it is interesting to note that the South African paper, The Citizen, well, it only put her passing as a header, despite the nation being a Commonwealth country. Mediapart discusses this tricky situation of paying tribute, but also taking a step back and even criticizing. It laments that this isn't really done very much, writing, quote, you cannot slap a cadaver, end quote. So the French side asks, isn't it time to open our eyes to the darker side of royalty, and even if people are mourning, end quote.
Maybe the time for that comes a little bit later, though, Solange.
Very true.
On a lighter note, cartoonists are also paying tribute today.
Yeah, the Elizabeth line is pulling out of the station and moving towards the light, as we see in Ben Jennings' cartoon for The Guardian. Meanwhile, Matt Davies has a bunch of corgi dogs, the Queen's favorite, looking forlorn and at empty welly boots and a hung-up crown and leash. Now, the Washington Post's Michael DeAdder notes there was only one Queen, while over the past 7 years she saw through 15 UK prime ministers. And finally, Peter Brooks of the London Times. He has Elizabeth's profile etched into the Union Jack as a reminder of her embodiment of the nation, but also as a nod to how her face and profile will no longer be on the UK's stamps, money, and countless logos. She has, in following with Brooks's illustration, left a hole in the nation.
quite literally. Finally, Solange, a number of papers are also discussing what some are calling a sign of the Queen's passing. Tell us about that.
Yeah, a well-timed double rainbow is making headlines. It wowed the crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace. As Bloomberg tells us, a twin rainbow appeared outside the Queen's London residence yesterday afternoon around the time that the Queen died. And as the Daily Express describes it, quote, it was an incredible moment. It had some mourners saying that the rainbow was Philip and Elizabeth's final farewell.
Ending on that touching note then, Solange, you will be back with us a little bit later on. That's Solange Moujon with a look at today's newspapers.